We've all heard the expression, "It saved my life." Exercise saved my life. AA saved my life. Religion saved my life. For some, it's not an expression. They were actually rescued by firefighters and first responders, doctors, nurses, police officers, and soldiers, complete strangers who stepped in and saved others from doom and danger. But when someone says, "such and such saved my life," the such and such are usually the people closest to us, the ones that care about us most. This happy little episode is for all those people, the folks who struggle along with us when we grieve our biggest losses and mend our broken spirits. It's a story about trauma, struggle, gratitude, and faith. And about Bob Ross, of course.
As you heard me say a million times, painting should make you happy. If it doesn't make you happy, then something's wrong. We're doing the wrong thing. Doing the wrong thing. It's like working. The man that does the best job is the man who's happy at his job. There. And for half my life, I did a job that I really wasn't happy with.
The fella at the center of our story had also been unhappy at his job. He'd make some big decisions to fix that. And on a day just like any other day, he was headed home after a 12-hour shift, just a mile away from his house, when everything changed.
I had stopped, was turning left on Highway 50, and I was rear-ended by a F-350. It pushed me into oncoming traffic, and then I was hit head-on by a F-150.
Here's a story about a duder who nearly lost his life, and, unable to move, found a new path with some help from his partner.
I can say there's some pretty crazy miracles that happen when your life is kind of thrown a wrench like this. And one of the miracles was that he found Bob.
And regained his will to live with encouragement from a friend on television.
A lot of my nights were spent sleeping right in the recliner. I can't wait to wake up so that I can turn on Bob Ross. And it's my lifeline, I guess, that kept me going.
So break out your brushes and your hankies and strap yourself in for an almighty tearjerker. It'll show you how love can conquer pain and how joy can conquer it too, especially when it's the joy of Bob Ross.
When you're in pain 24/7, your mind starts to weaken, and he would be that little shot of adrenaline that would lift me back up and say, okay, look at things this way. It's your world. You can do anything you want with it.
I think Bob would be absolutely delighted to know that he brought this. He brought this to Brian. He brought hope. He brought a new love, a new passion, a desire to learn.
And that may be the true joy of painting, is when you share it with other people. I really believe that's the true joy. Whether you teach them to paint, or you give paintings to them as gifts, or your personality just improves because you paint. Sometimes it makes your personality a little better. If you're in a better mood and you've accomplished something, you feel better. And the people who love you then, they're a little happier to be around you. So even that can be a joy of painting.
Brian Van Leer grew up in Montana, surrounded by tall mountains, granite peaks, and green valleys.
And let's go right up in here. And let us start and just drop in. Big mountain. Big old mountain. He lives right there.
Today, Brian lives in Otterville, Missouri. Population 444. Brian came to this tiny town from Utah. He worked in the aerospace industry, building jets and Tomahawk missiles. The usual stuff. But Brian begins to grow weary of his work there. He's got family back in Missouri, grandkids. So he decides to make a big decision. Brian moves to the Midwest, takes a new job. He's 8 months in, just settling into his new life. And then, the accident. His Hyundai Elantra rear-ended into oncoming traffic, then struck head-on by a second SUV.
It pinned me in the car. I had the engine, the dashboard, steering wheel all piled up on top of me. And it took them about an hour to cut me out. And when I came to in the vehicle, the paramedic was trying to get me going. I have no recollection of anything other than when it happened, there was this gold flash. They told me that I was out for about 45 minutes. The windshield, of course, it exploded in my face and the airbag went off, and I had glass that went in through the bottom of my lip, knocked my two front teeth on the bottom straight down flat into my mouth, and of course my face was all cut up. And when I came to, I didn't know what had happened. The paramedics just kept telling me, "You're going to be all right. We're going to get you out of here. We're going to get you to the trauma center," and that's where I was headed.
An ambulance takes Brian to University Hospital in Columbia. He suffered severe facial trauma, and one of his legs has been crushed by the impact.
They took me into surgery that night, and they put a X-Fix apparatus on my leg that went all the way up to my thigh, and in the impact, it basically sheared off the tibia and fibia a quarter inch below my knee. They couldn't fix anything right away because of the swelling and the tissue damage. So this X-Fix was going to hold it into place. My heart got bruised from the seat belt when it deployed. I was hit 60 mile an hour in the back and 60 mile an hour in the head.
Brian's a big dude, 6'3", 250 pounds. All of a sudden, he's Humpty Dumpty. All the King's doctors pondering how to put a large part of his large frame back together again. Meanwhile, back in Otterville, one of its 444 residents is making dinner and waiting for her partner to get home from work.
My name is Jenny Adderley. I'm originally from Utah, living in Missouri now. And what do I do? Well, I'm working at the bank, but also the art store. I work at the local art store. Every night before Brian leaves work, he would call me and say, "I'm on my way home." And I know it's about a 20-minute drive. I mean, every night. He's just so consistently faithful to that. And the time for him to get home had came, and he didn't get home. And I thought, well, maybe he's talking to someone after work, and 15 minutes come. And I'm like, okay, now I'm getting nervous. And then 20 minutes, and I'm like, okay, it's not right. I'm going to try to call his phone and just make sure he's okay. So I tried to call his phone, and it didn't answer. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. So I waited about 20 more minutes, and I called his phone, and a woman answered. And I'm like, who's this? You know, you'd be acting crazy in your head for a hot minute. But again, I know Brian better than that. And she's like, "I am a paramedic. My name is so-and-so." And she goes, "Who is this?" And I told her, "This is Jenny. This is Brian's." And she's like, "I need to let you know he's alive, but he's been in a terrible accident." And I'm like, oh, hang on, wait a minute, what? It's dark at 6 o'clock, at that point in the year. I found out the hospital they were going to take him to, and the roads are dark, and we live on country roads, and country roads, the deers love to run across the road in the middle of the night, and try to figure out what I was going to do. I mean, it took me 20 minutes of just trying to wrap my head around how I was going to be able to drive the hour, because it's an hour, it is a full hour to the hospital that he's at. And then when I went back, and oh my God, it was horrifying. His foot is like flopped in a weird way off to the side, and he's covered in shards of glass, and his face is all swelled up. And was there everything I could do to just try to somewhat be calm? Because I wasn't. Oh, my whole world is just totally blown up. This is 1,000 miles from home. There's no one here. He is my whole world. And I don't know if he's going to be okay.
Jenny is by Brian's side in the ER for 7 hours. She sleeps in a hotel that first night and keeps returning while doctors perform various surgeries.
I spent 14 hours a day at the hospital and drove home every night when it was dark and every morning when it was dark. And one of those mornings I was so tired, and I was worried, of course, about hitting the deer and all of that. And then the sun came up, and it was the most incredible sunrise The colors just like overwhelmed me that I had to pull over and I had to take a picture of that. And I'm like, thank you, because I needed that. And on one of those other nights when I was driving home from the hospital, and of course worried about it being dark, it had snowed a little bit, and the moon came out, and it was almost like twilight. It was so light that night when I needed it to be, because I get so tired, so wore out, not really doing well all the way around. And then there's these little tiny nature miracles.
It would be 9 long drives, day and night, before Brian sent home to begin a long road to recovery.
That started some stressful days. And as hard as I loved Brian, I couldn't fix Brian. I couldn't help him not suffer. But what I could do was create an environment for him where he could forget about it for a little while and just encourage him to keep trying and keep going.
Psychologically, I was in a mess. I've worked from the time I was 10 years old. I was born and raised in Montana, worked on dairy farms and, with cattle and hay and all of these things. So I've always been active, out doing things and moving. And here I was stuck. And I was stuck in a place where I was headed downhill. I can't do anything but sit in a recliner. As you can probably imagine, I'm staring at the ceiling and I'm staring at the walls and I'm trying to make heads and tails out of all of it.
It was pretty all-consuming. For probably the first 3 months. He was not able to walk or do basically anything on his own. I was like full on, hands-on deck, trying to do that, and then had to get a job and start working. And that's when I got the job at the art store, was after his accident, because, well, we're kind of running out of money and life kind of hits you hard for a minute.
When you're in a bad space, I guess, your head really does some things and you really wonder if it's all worth it. And I'm a pretty prideful person, I guess, and I always thought that I could do anything and everything, and I found myself in a bad position.
It was a evolution for him. Everything stopped. Life as he knew it stopped. Nothing would be the same ever again. And mine either. Life went kind of the opposite for me.
I talked to my son and I'm starting to talk like, would it be better to, just as I put it to him, quote unquote, is go find a pine tree in Montana and just, end it there. While I was in my recliner, I was watching TV and we had the Roku channel. So I turned that on.
Hi, welcome back. I'm glad you could join me today. And today I have one of my little friends here that's having lunch while we're doing this, so thought I'd share her with you. This is a little baby fox squirrel, and she's just having a little lunch with me. Ooh, what's there? Too much? Huh? There. Isn't she something?
And I had heard of Bob Ross in my lifetime, but I had never taken any kind of notice of Bob Ross and who he was. Anyway, I started watching, and this, I guess the best word to describe it is this transformation starts taking place. And I know it sounds crazy, maybe silly to some, but my experience was that I was in such a dark place and I was losing hope of what I was going to be able to do. I couldn't walk. My only means of transportation was, now I was in a wheelchair, and my whole world was upside down. So I'm spiraling and it's getting dark, and I'm watching Bob Ross, and for some reason my mind left where I was at and went to what he was doing and what he was, how he talks, his voice, and being positive, and the way that he always looked at things.
And nature gives you everything you need. And when you're at home, maybe you want 3 rails on your fence, or 4, or maybe half of them fell off. You have to make these decisions. And that's what makes it fun. It's because it's your world. You create what you want.
And next to my chair is a window that I could see outside. As I'm watching Bob Ross and I'm picking up these things and these techniques, I guess, and all, and I'd never held a brush in my hand. And I decided that I needed to start looking at things, a little differently. And I would look out the window and I would see the trees, and I would start to see the depths of the trees and the layers of the trees, the light, the dark, the different colors. I think that I am probably 90 to 95% of every human being out there. We wake up in the morning and we prepare ourselves to go to work. And we go to work and we got to make an income and we've got to do those things. And we don't look up.
Let's put some happy little clouds playing up here in the sky. And follow angles here. Angles are very important. I'm going to take a little phthalo blue and alizarin crimson, mix it together, and we'll make a little purplish color.
How many people actually stop long enough to watch a sunset? Not just look at a tree, but to look through a tree and into a tree and to see the darkness and the light and how many colors that are playing in there. He would say, it's your world. You make it what you want to make it. I started seeing things that way.
And they lived happily ever after. Oh, no, wait, there's more. Did I mention that Jenny's a painter, too? Oh, yeah.
My fiance is artistic. She paints, and for Christmas, I had bought her all kinds of oil paints and brushes and a new easel. And me personally, I couldn't paint. To draw a stick figure was a challenge for me.
So Brian is a machinist, which is a very logical, mathematical way of thinking. Everything fits in a spot, everything is complete and straight and even. Painting is not that way. Painting is kind of like me. It's a hot mess. Everything is all over the place all the time. And that's what makes me happy about oil painting, is if you paint a crooked tree and you drive outside, you're like, oh, there's a crooked tree. That totally works. So for me, the fun of painting, especially landscapes, is that nature is really chaotic. You've got dead trees and big trees and, there's so much more opportunity to paint life that way when it's not perfect.
Jenny says, Brian, you need to try to paint. You need to try to do that.
Shoot, we're just painting the whole forest here. And that's all right. That's all right. Put as many or as few in your world as you want. Because painting is very individual. Everybody's going to see this differently. And that's the way it should be.
I know Bob has a soothing voice. And sometimes you'd find him just napping too, Bob. You come home from whatever I was doing and he'd be, of course, taking a nap because he was very calm to listen to. And I think Brian's world was a lot of pain, a lot of chaos with doctor's appointments and not knowing what was coming up next. And there was a weird certainty about him. You knew he was going to be there. It was a sense of escaping. And if you can find something that takes that away for a half an hour while you're watching Bob, or for a couple of hours while you're painting, then we chase that.
She would sit next to me and watch, and she would say, see how he's holding the brush, see how he's doing this.
Let's go up to the canvas. Hold the brush straight into the canvas, touch it. As you come down, add more pressure. Make it get bigger toward the bottom. Isn't that a super, super way to make a little tree trunk? It's that easy.
I was reluctant to do it. I said, yeah, well, maybe I'll, get to it someday. Well, one day she says, you need to get in your wheelchair, and out on the deck, she had put up an easel, and she zip-tied an umbrella to my chair so that the sun wasn't beating down on me, and she says, paint, go ahead and paint. And,
So we've been in the house a lot. There's a lot of homebound time with him. So I decided I was going to set him a whole table of paints up outside, rolled him outside, put a little umbrella over him because he's kind of fair, pasty boy. So we don't want him to get sunburnt. Got him a little drink, set up the whole easel and everything, and just he was going to go for it. Now, he wasn't painting off of a picture or anything. He was just been watching Bob, and he was like, I can do this. It's like when you and I watch the Olympics and we're like, oh, I can totally ski like that. I can skate like you can't. Okay, you just can't. It's not how it works. But Bob made him think it was. And I love that about him. I love the confidence and the surety of a man who's never picked up a paintbrush.
You really can do it, even if you've never painted before, never picked up a brush. You really can do this.
If you had asked me a few years ago if that would be ever possible for him, I'd say absolutely not. There is no way he would ever. Brian is hunting, fishing, outdoors, fixing, but he is not artistically painting. I'm as shocked as anyone that it turned out this way.
It's a storybook moment. A man torn apart by circumstance, wheeled into nature by his lover, brush in hand, about to touch canvas for the first time ever. Not only is Brian Van Leer about to paint like Bob Ross, he's about to convince himself that darkness is temporary, and that with a little encouragement from your soulmate and a TV painter you adore, you might just make the best landscape painting ever!
It was horrific. It was absolutely a wreck, and it was terrible. But that was my first experience at trying to take what I saw and what I was learning just by watching and listening to Bob Ross on TV.
You can learn to compose and create your paintings as you go. And you look at them, you'll begin to see things. And with practice, you'll be able to see more and more. After you've done a dozen paintings or so, you won't believe what you can do.
It was kind of a mess. And he said, that's not going to happen again. And Brian's tenacious fighting side kind of kicked in, and he just sat down and watched more and more and more. And he's watching Bob's hands, and he's watching him put the paints on, and he's like marathon watching. You're like hours, because he's really couldn't do much else, but his leg was leaned up and he's watching TV. So he'd watch it, and then he'd learn a little bit more. He got down the mountains, and his mountains were beautiful. Oh, he was so good at the mountains.
I just kept painting, and I kept painting, and I got better, and I got better, and I've been able to accomplish things, and I've been able to make strides and develop my painting.
He didn't take any classes. Bob taught him everything he knows, which is crazy because I took classes and I'm okay. But Brian's style of painting is extremely exciting and unique because he doesn't look at a photograph. He brings stuff out of his head, out of his mind. Beautiful mountains, scenes, and landscapes that I feel like he's been there. Like he knows these places.
Things just started changing. I got positive about things. And Jenny, one day we were sitting in the living room and she said, hey, there's this gal in Jeff City that paints, and she's certified Bob Ross. And I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Maybe we'll go check that out.
Brian and Jenny take the 1-hour drive to the art workshop of certified Ross instructor Janice Bergen.
We kind of held hands and we walked into that classroom together, and Janice was awesome. She was just like, come on in, sit down. And Brian walked out with a painting that was as good as anyone else's in the class.
She's wow, what a great person she is. And she's very talented, very, very talented. And she started working with us, and I'm kind of a yuck up, and I kind of, I like to have a good time and all. And so, as we're learning and she's teaching us techniques that helped us develop our painting, we developed a friendship.
Became a friend. You know me. I think everybody needs a friend. They're the most important commodity in the world.
But watching what he went through, and there was so little complaining, there was so little of him telling me what was wrong or what was bad. He's an amazing, strong, incredible man. He's my hero. He's my hero to watch him go through what he went through. And And he was not consumed by it. There are absolutely times where you become low and depressed and not sure of what's supposed to happen after this. And he had to reinvent himself and figure out who and what he was going to do with his time, what he could do, because it wasn't the same as what it was. Bob didn't just help him get through it. It gave him a focus in a time where I think there was a lot of sadness, there was a lot of depression, there was a lot of frustration. And Bob and this painting was an escape. We'd set up an easel for him, and 4 hours, he's just painting and he's forgetting. He's like, okay, when he's done, his leg still hurts, but when he's doing it, he's so involved in it, he's so deep in it, and he was capable of doing it. I just had to keep telling him he was capable. I could keep telling him his mountains look great, your water looks great, it really is good, just trust me, I know what I'm doing. He needed a lot of affirmations in the beginning to continue doing it, but wow, how far he has come.
More than 2 years since the accident, Brian has come a long way. He walks with a cane, but he's back up on his feet. Brian and Jenny visit Janice's studio once a month to do a new painting together.
You know, I get to a point in a painting that I'm afraid, well, what if you screw it up? You know, and then Jenny will say, well, what would Bob Ross do? You know, it's a happy accident.
And you can't make a mistake here. This is enjoyable. Load the brush as it needs paint. And there's not a great deal of paint on the canvas. You really don't need a lot of paint. Push that brush in there and bend it. Just get all those little actions.
From that came a kind of love that you can't get any other way until you're truly serving someone and you're wiping his wounds and and everything else that needs it. It's a different kind of love, and as difficult as it's been, I told him I'm really thankful that I got to learn to love him different than I did. You know, a deeper, slower burning kind of love.
It's hard to call what happened to Brian Van Leer a happy accident, but it's often during our hardest times that our eyes are the widest open. And when Brian needed it most, Bob Ross was there to help him see the light.
You know, the man's dead and gone, you know, and he's, you know, the influence that he had on me was undeniable. If he were alive today and I were to sit down and talk to him, all I could do is say thank you.
Painting is a great deal like life. You need a little dark in your life so that you know when the good stuff happens.
There's nothing more beautiful and more fulfilling in life than just stopping and taking in creation, you know, everything around us.
The other day, he painted me a beach because I love the beach. So he did the beach and the palm trees for first try.
Let's go right in here. Maybe there'll be a little beach that lives right here. Right there. And just let that blend right up into the watercolor here.
I think he did a great job. And you can see that he's trying to paint now things that I love, which was pretty sweet that he did that. He now completes these beautiful, incredible paintings. And I never in my life thought I would be sitting next to my sweetheart painting with him, ever. That's so far out of the realm of what I ever thought was possible.
A fuzzy-haired painter guy from the TV continues to offer hope for those who are hurting and dazzles us with lessons about art that are also lessons about life.
It's been pretty incredible to watch his tenacity to learn the concepts. And when I go off to work, he'll come with me and set up his little easel and just paint for hours while I'm working. So again, having him this involved in my life was not something I ever thought possible. But now here we are, we're going on painting dates and he's going to work and painting with me. And he's in an environment, I promise you, he has never seen before that accident in his entire life. I can't say he ever stepped into an art store. Can't say he ever touched a canvas before that day.
Watch Bob Ross long enough and you might just discover the gratitude buried deep beneath your broken body or your bruised heart. And you'll give yourself the best chance at a comeback to start a new chapter that's filled with color, with wonder, and with joy.
Painting can change your life. It can change everybody's life. I get letters every day from people who have discovered the show. Maybe they were sick for a few days or they were injured and they happened to be laying at home and flipping the channels and they come upon the show and they sort of get captivated by it.
Two things after the accident saved my life, and one of them was Jenny, without a doubt, and the other was Bob Ross.
I think we all need something that keeps us looking forward. And through his art and his shows, that's what Bob brought to us. He brought us the opportunity to keep going and to be something that maybe we didn't even know we could be.
And it has literally changed hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people's lives. I'm using a little green here on the big brush. I get a lot of letters from people who have retired from an occupation and they want something to do with their time. And this is one of the most fantastic things. And I think everybody at one time or another in their life has had the desire to create something, to put something on canvas. And we make it very simple here. You can do it.
The old clock on the wall tells me we've got another finished podcast episode. Hold on, this was a good one. I want to sign this one. There. I want to thank my guests, Jenny Adderley and Brian Van Leer. This happy little episode was produced with help from James Shapiro at Jansen Media, and it was mixed by Digital Sound and Video of Daytona Beach, Florida. Support your local public television station and say thanks for giving us Bob Ross and the joy of painting. We'd love to see your paintings. Use hashtag #PaintLikeBobRoss. Bob Ross certified instructors are the only ones that know how to teach you Bob's world-famous painting method. So don't settle for second best. Find your local CRI at bobross.com and then click Take a Class. If you got your own Bob Ross story to tell, you can leave us a message at 866-FANBRUSH or email us at podcast@bobross.com. And you can follow us on Facebook at The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. I'm Ron Scalzo. The Joy of Bob Ross is written and produced by me, Ron Scalzo, in partnership with Bob Ross, Inc. Bob Ross name and images, they're registered trademarks of Bob Ross, Inc.